The clinking of crystal against crystal was a familiar symphony in our apartment, a soundtrack to evenings I cherished. Tonight, however, the melody felt discordant. I'd left the office early, a rare indulgence, a surprise I'd meticulously orchestrated for Clara, a bottle of her favorite Bordeaux, a bouquet of lilies, her preferred bloom, and reservations at that quaint Italian place she'd mentioned weeks ago. A small gesture, perhaps, but one I hoped would reignite the flicker I felt had dimmed in our relationship. Lately, a subtle distance had crept between us, a quiet unease that settled in the spaces between our conversations, in the lingering silences that stretched just a little too long. I'd attributed it to the pressures of her work, the demanding deadlines and endless meetings that consumed her days. She was a driven woman, my Clara, a force to be reckoned with in the architectural world, and I, in my own way, understood ambition, the relentless pursuit of a vision. But lately, her focus seemed to have shifted, her attention drawn elsewhere, a subtle undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher. The apartment was hushed when I entered, a stillness that felt both welcoming and unsettling. The only sound was the faint murmur of classical music drifting from the living room. I paused in the hallway, a smile already forming on my lips, picturing her surprise, the way her eyes would light up when she saw the flowers. But as I stepped into the living room, the scene before me froze my smile in its tracks. Clara was there, not with another person, as my darkest fears had whispered, but alone, engrossed in a video on her tablet. It wasn't the solitude that bothered me, nor the fact that she was occupied. It was the look on her face, a soft, almost dreamy expression that made my stomach clench. She was watching a cooking demonstration, the chef a local celebrity named Antoine, a man whose name had begun appearing more and more frequently in our conversations, in the glossy magazines that littered our coffee table. He was demonstrating some elaborate chocolate dessert, his movements precise and theatrical, his voice smooth and captivating. But it wasn't the dessert that held Clara's attention, nor the chef's culinary skills. It was the way she was watching him, her eyes sparkling with an admiration that felt misplaced, a warmth that should have been reserved for me, for the man who loved her, who had come home early to surprise her with flowers and wine and a quiet evening together. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a cold fist clenching around my heart. It wasn't infidelity, not in the traditional sense. But it was something else, something equally unsettling. A shift in her affections, a silent betrayal that cut deeper than any physical transgression. The lilies in my hand suddenly felt heavy, their sweet fragrance turning cloying. The Bordeaux, still chilling in its carrier, seemed to mock me with its promise of a romantic evening that would never be. I stood there unseen, unheard, watching my wife's face illuminated by the glow of the tablet, her eyes fixed on another man, and a cold dread settled over me, a premonition of something broken, something irrevocably changed. The image of Clara's rapturous gaze, fixed on Antoine's culinary theatrics, became a recurring nightmare, a phantom limb that throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. It haunted my waking hours, infiltrating my thoughts during meetings, clouding my judgment as I reviewed blueprints, even tainting the simple pleasure of reading a book before bed. The seed of suspicion, once planted, had taken root, its tendrils snaking through the foundations of our relationship, threatening to crack the very structure we had built together. I started noticing things I'd previously overlooked, subtle shifts in Clara's behavior, tiny flags that now seemed to wave frantically in the wind. Her late-night calls, always purportedly about work, now seemed to carry a hushed intimacy, her voice softer, more melodic than usual. She'd always been a dedicated professional, but lately, her work had become an all-consuming obsession, a convenient excuse for late arrivals and unexplained absences. And then there was the scent, a subtle but distinct cologne that lingered in our apartment, on her clothes, a fragrance that was decidedly not mine. It was a sophisticated, spicy scent, the kind a man like Antoine would wear, the kind that whispered of expensive tastes and clandestine encounters. I tried to rationalize my anxieties, to dismiss them as the overactive imagination of a man suddenly insecure. Clara was a beautiful, successful woman, admired by many. It was natural that she would attract attention. And Antoine, with his charming demeanor and undeniable charisma, was a magnet for admiration. Perhaps I was simply jealous, threatened by his presence in our lives, by the way Clara's eyes lit up whenever his name was mentioned. But the rationalizations felt flimsy, like a thin veil that barely concealed the ugly truth lurking beneath. I started subtly tracking her movements, a habit that felt both invasive and necessary. I'd find excuses to pick her up from work, arriving earlier than expected, just to see her reaction. I'd pay attention to her schedule, noting her meetings, her appointments, searching for any inconsistencies, any unexplained gaps in her day. It was a descent into paranoia, a world of whispered suspicions and furtive glances. I felt like a stranger in my own home, a detective searching for clues in the landscape of my marriage. Every conversation became a minefield, every shared moment tainted by the unspoken question that hung between us. "What are you hiding from me, Clara?" The unease gnawed at my gut, a constant, dull ache that refused to subside. I was a man on the verge of discovery, a man desperately trying to hold onto the illusion of a perfect life, even as the cracks in the facade grew wider and more visible. The confirmation, when it came, was swift and brutal, a sharp blade twisting in the already gaping wound of my suspicion. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation, no tearful confessions or clandestine meetings discovered. It was a simple, discarded receipt, tucked carelessly into the pocket of Clara's coat, a silent testament to her betrayal. I found it while doing laundry, a mundane chore that had become a ritual of scrutiny. Every item of her clothing was now examined, every pocket checked for stray lipstick stains or unfamiliar scents. The receipt was crumpled, almost an afterthought, but the details were clear. A romantic dinner for two at Antoine's exclusive restaurant, the date matching a night Clara had claimed to be working late on a crucial project. The image of them together, laughing over candlelight, sharing intimate whispers and stolen glances, seared itself into my mind, a grotesque parody of the romantic evenings we used to share. The elegant typeface of the restaurant's name, the exorbitant price of the wine they'd ordered, the handwritten note at the bottom. "To my muse with love, Antoine." It all added insult to injury, a cruel mockery of my naive trust. I remember standing there in the laundry room, the crumpled receipt clutched in my hand, the scent of detergent suddenly suffocating. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the familiar surroundings of our apartment turning alien and hostile. A wave of nausea washed over me, a physical manifestation of the betrayal that had poisoned my soul. I wanted to scream, to rage, to confront Clara with the evidence of her infidelity, to demand answers, explanations, apologies. But something held me back, a cold, calculating voice whispering in the back of my mind. This wasn't just about hurt pride or wounded ego. This was a violation of trust, a deliberate deception that had shattered the foundation of our marriage. And it demanded more than just a heated confrontation, more than just tears and recriminations. It demanded retribution. The initial rage, the primal urge to lash out, to break things, to inflict pain, gradually subsided, replaced by a chilling calm. I was an architect, after all, a builder and a designer. My world was one of precision, of calculated angles and carefully balanced structures. And I would apply that same meticulous approach to my revenge. Confrontation was messy, unpredictable. It offered the satisfaction of a momentary release, but it lacked the elegance of a well-crafted plan, the slow burn of a carefully orchestrated downfall. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I wouldn't let them witness the extent of their damage. Instead, I would become the architect of their destruction, patiently laying the groundwork, subtly manipulating the pieces, until their world came crashing down around them. I spent hours that night pacing the apartment, the silence now a deafening roar. Every photograph of Clara, every memento of our life together, seemed to mock me with its innocence, a reminder of the life that had been stolen from me. I imagined different scenarios, each more elaborate and devastating than the last. I could expose their affair, publicly humiliate them, ruin their reputations. I could sabotage Antoine's career, plant rumors, discredit his culinary empire. I could make Clara doubt his affections, sow seeds of discord in their illicit paradise. The possibilities were endless, each offering a unique flavor of vengeance. But I needed more than just a fleeting moment of satisfaction. I wanted them to suffer, to experience the same slow, agonizing erosion of their world that I was enduring. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions, to feel the full weight of their betrayal. And so I began to plan. I researched Antoine, delving into his past, his ambitions, his vulnerabilities. I studied Clara, her dreams, her insecurities, the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. I became a student of their lives, learning their routines, their habits, their secrets. I was no longer just a husband betrayed. I was a strategist, a puppet master, preparing to pull the strings of their fate. And as I laid out my plan, a sense of grim satisfaction settled over me. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming control, about restoring the balance that had been so carelessly disrupted. It was about becoming the architect of their destruction, the master builder of their downfall. My first move was to befriend Antoine. It wasn't difficult. He was a public figure, accustomed to adoration, eager to engage with his patrons. I became a regular at his restaurant, a discerning diner who appreciated the nuances of his cuisine, the artistry of his creations. I'd request a table in his section, engage him in conversation, compliment his latest culinary innovation. He was, as I expected, charming and charismatic, his ego easily stroked by my genuine admiration. He saw me as a kindred spirit, a man of refined taste and discerning palate. He had no idea I was studying him, observing his mannerisms, cataloging his weaknesses. I learned about his ambitions, his desire to expand his culinary empire, to open restaurants in other cities, to become a global brand. He spoke of his passion for food, his relentless pursuit of perfection, his dedication to his craft. But beneath the polished veneer, I detected a hint of insecurity, a fear of failure that gnawed at his confidence. He was a man driven by ambition, a man who craved recognition and validation. And that, I realized, was his Achilles heel. I also learned about his social circle, the people he trusted, the influencers who shaped his world. I subtly infiltrated his network, attending events, making connections, becoming a familiar face in his orbit. I was like a virus, slowly infecting his system, gaining access to his inner workings, preparing to dismantle him from within. And all the while, I maintained the facade of a loyal customer, a devoted fan of his culinary genius. He had no idea that the man who praised his creations, who shared his laughter and his ambitions, was the same man whose life he had so carelessly destroyed. I was playing a long game, a game of patience and precision. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I was going to win. While cultivating my friendship with Antoine, I simultaneously focused on Clara. It was a delicate balancing act, requiring a different kind of manipulation, a more subtle approach. I became the doting husband, attentive and affectionate, showering her with the kind of attention I'd neglected in recent months. I brought her flowers, cooked her elaborate meals, planned romantic weekends away. I listened patiently to her work woes, offering words of encouragement and support. I even feigned interest in her newfound fascination with gourmet cooking, asking her about Antoine's techniques, praising her attempts to recreate his dishes. It was a sickening charade, a performance that required me to suppress my disgust, to swallow my rage, to pretend that nothing was amiss. But it was necessary. I needed to lull her into a false sense of security, to make her believe that I was oblivious to her betrayal, that our marriage was as solid as ever. And it worked. Clara responded to my renewed affection, her guilt manifesting as a heightened need for reassurance. She became more open with me, sharing her dreams, her insecurities, the anxieties that plagued her waking hours. She spoke of her ambition to become a partner in her firm, her frustration with the office politics, her fear of being overlooked. She confided in me about her relationship with Antoine, the thrill of the forbidden, the excitement of their clandestine encounters. She painted a picture of a passionate love affair, a whirlwind of stolen moments and whispered promises. But beneath the surface, I detected a flicker of doubt, a hint of unease. She wasn't entirely convinced of Antoine's sincerity, his devotion. She questioned his motives, his intentions. And I, the ever-supportive husband, listened patiently, offering subtle suggestions, planting seeds of doubt that would slowly germinate in her mind. I was playing the role of the confidant, the trusted friend, all the while gathering information, identifying her weaknesses, preparing to exploit them when the time was right. It was a cruel game, but one I was determined to play to the very end. My investigations into Antoine's life yielded a valuable piece of information: a hidden gambling addiction. It was a secret he guarded fiercely, a dark underbelly to his glamorous public persona. He frequented high-stakes poker games. Whispered rumors suggested he'd accrued significant debts, and the pressure was mounting. This, I realized, was the lever I needed to pry open his carefully constructed facade. I didn't confront him, didn't threaten to expose him. That would be too crude, too direct. Instead, I opted for a more subtle approach, a whisper campaign designed to chip away at his reputation, to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of those who admired him. I discreetly leaked the information to a local gossip columnist, a woman known for her insatiable appetite for scandal. I didn't reveal my identity, posing as a concerned friend, a disillusioned admirer. I hinted at Antoine's mounting debts, his reckless behavior, the potential damage to his reputation. The columnist, sensing a juicy story, eagerly took the bait. She began her own investigation, digging into Antoine's finances, interviewing his associates, piecing together a narrative of a man teetering on the brink of ruin. It was a slow burn, a gradual erosion of his public image. Rumors began to circulate, whispers of financial troubles, of shady dealings, of a man whose carefully cultivated persona was nothing more than a facade. Antoine, oblivious to the source of the leaks, grew increasingly paranoid, his confidence shaken, his focus shifting from his culinary ambitions to damage control. He became withdrawn, irritable, his charm replaced by a simmering resentment. The cracks in his armor were starting to show, and I, the architect of his downfall, watched with a cold satisfaction. Clara, meanwhile, was climbing the corporate ladder with ruthless ambition. She'd set her sights on a partnership at her architecture firm, a goal she pursued with single-minded focus. She worked late nights, networked tirelessly, and presented innovative designs that pushed the boundaries of conventional architecture. I knew this ambition was her weakness, her vulnerability, and I intended to exploit it. Using my own connections in the architectural world, I subtly undermined her efforts. I planted seeds of doubt about her leadership abilities, hinted at her lack of experience, subtly promoted a rival candidate for the coveted partnership. I did it discreetly, anonymously, leaving no trace of my involvement. It was a game of whispers and insinuations, a subtle manipulation of perceptions. Clara, oblivious to my machinations, continued her relentless pursuit of the partnership, unaware that the ground beneath her feet was slowly shifting. She presented her latest design, a masterpiece of sustainable architecture, with confidence and passion. But the partners, influenced by my subtle campaign, expressed reservations, questioned her vision, and ultimately awarded the partnership to her rival. The blow to Clara's ego was devastating. She'd poured her heart and soul into her work, sacrificing everything for this promotion. And now, it had been snatched away from her, leaving her feeling betrayed and disillusioned. Her confidence shattered, her ambition thwarted. She began to question her own abilities, her own worth. And I, the architect of her downfall, watched from the sidelines, a silent observer of her unraveling. Antoine's restaurant, once the toast of the city, began to experience a subtle but steady decline. The whispers of his financial troubles had started to affect his clientele. Reservations dwindled. The once packed dining room now sported empty tables, the lively atmosphere replaced by a nervous tension. But I wasn't content to let his business wither slowly. I wanted a more dramatic, more public downfall. And so, I turned my attention to his most prized possession, his reputation for culinary excellence. Using online platforms and anonymous accounts, I began to plant negative reviews, subtly criticizing the quality of the food, the service, the overall dining experience. I targeted the restaurant's hygiene, hinting at potential health code violations, suggesting that the kitchen was not as pristine as it appeared. I even fabricated stories of food poisoning, describing graphic details of nausea and vomiting, creating a sense of unease among potential diners. The reviews were carefully crafted, avoiding overt negativity, maintaining a veneer of objectivity. They were the kind of reviews that planted seeds of doubt, that made people question their previous experiences, that eroded trust in the establishment. The effect was gradual but devastating. Antoine, obsessed with maintaining his perfect image, was driven to distraction by the negative feedback. He micromanaged his staff, scrutinized every dish, obsessed over every detail. But the more he tried to control the situation, the more it spiraled out of control. The negative reviews continued, the rumors persisted, and the once glowing reputation of his restaurant began to tarnish, like a prized silver platter slowly oxidizing in the damp air. My next move was a calculated stroke of malice, designed to strike at the heart of Clara and Antoine's relationship. I knew Antoine had a past, a string of broken hearts and discarded lovers. And I knew just the woman to exploit his history. Isabelle, a former flame whose resentment burned as brightly as her fiery red hair. I'd met Isabelle at a gallery opening, a chance encounter that I now recognized as a fortunate twist of fate. She was an artist, her work a reflection of her passionate, volatile nature. She'd been deeply hurt by Antoine, discarded for a younger, more glamorous model, and she carried the scars of that betrayal like a badge of honor. I orchestrated a chance encounter between Isabelle and Clara, a seemingly innocent meeting at a charity event. I'd subtly planted the seed in Isabelle's mind, hinting at Antoine's current infidelity, fueling her resentment, awakening her desire for revenge. The two women, drawn together by their shared connection to Antoine, struck up a conversation. Isabelle, fueled by a potent cocktail of jealousy and bitterness, didn't hold back. She shared intimate details of Antoine's past infidelities, his manipulative tendencies, his penchant for using women to advance his career. She painted a picture of a man who was incapable of love, a man who craved admiration and validation above all else. Clara, already harboring doubts about Antoine's sincerity, was shaken by Isabelle's revelations. The seeds of suspicion, planted by my earlier manipulations, now blossomed into full-blown distrust. She began to question everything Antoine had told her, every promise he'd made, every gesture of affection. The foundation of their relationship, already weakened by the strain of his declining career and her own professional setbacks, began to crumble under the weight of Isabelle's revelations. The carefully constructed world Clara had built around herself was collapsing. Her career, once a source of pride and accomplishment, had stalled, the coveted partnership slipping through her fingers. Her relationship with Antoine, the passionate escape from her mundane reality, was now tainted by doubt and suspicion. The thrill of the forbidden had faded, replaced by a gnawing anxiety, a constant fear of discovery, a growing sense of unease. The late-night calls became tense, filled with veiled accusations and thinly disguised resentment. The stolen moments were now fraught with guilt and apprehension. The passion that had once burned so brightly was now a flickering flame, threatened by the winds of doubt and mistrust. Clara, once so confident and self-assured, was now a shadow of her former self. She withdrew from her friends, neglected her work, and retreated into a shell of isolation. The vibrant, ambitious woman I had fallen in love with was slowly disappearing, replaced by a hollow shell, haunted by regret and uncertainty. I watched her unraveling with a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Satisfaction, because her pain was a testament to my carefully orchestrated revenge. Pity, because I knew that the woman I loved, the woman I had vowed to protect, was lost, consumed by the consequences of her own actions. But my pity was fleeting. It was quickly replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. I had come too far to turn back now. I had invested too much time, too much energy, too much of my own soul in this elaborate scheme of revenge. And I would see it through to the bitter end. As Clara's world crumbled, I played the role of the supportive husband to perfection. I offered a shoulder to cry on, a listening ear, a comforting presence in her time of need. I feigned concern for her well-being, expressed sympathy for her professional setbacks, and offered words of encouragement. I even subtly fueled her suspicions about Antoine, hinting at his infidelity, suggesting that he was using her for his own gain. "You deserve better, Clara," I'd say, my voice laced with feigned empathy. "You're a beautiful, talented woman. Don't let anyone make you feel less than that." She'd cling to my words like a lifeline, seeking solace in my apparent understanding, my unwavering support. She confided in me about her doubts, her fears, her growing resentment towards Antoine. She questioned his motives, his sincerity, his commitment to their relationship. And I, the master manipulator, subtly validated her concerns, planting seeds of discord that would further erode their already fragile bond. It was a perverse game, a twisted form of emotional manipulation. But I was adept at it, playing the role of the concerned husband with chilling authenticity. I was the wolf in sheep's clothing, the predator disguised as the protector. And Clara, blinded by her own pain and vulnerability, was falling prey to my carefully crafted deception. I watched her crumble, her spirit broken, her confidence shattered. And with each tear she shed, with each doubt that gnawed at her soul, my own sense of twisted satisfaction grew. I was close now, so close to achieving my ultimate goal. The pieces were in place, the stage was set. All that remained was to deliver the final blow. The culmination of my plan was set for a grand charity gala, a glittering event attended by the city's elite, a perfect stage for a public downfall. Both Clara and Antoine were invited, their presence essential to my carefully orchestrated finale. I'd ensured that the gossip columnist's exposé on Antoine's gambling debts was published the morning of the gala, a strategically timed bombshell designed to maximize the impact. The article, a masterpiece of innuendo and insinuation, painted a damning portrait of a man teetering on the brink of financial ruin, his glamorous lifestyle a facade masking a desperate reality. It hinted at shady dealings, unpaid debts, and the potential collapse of his culinary empire. The news spread like wildfire through the city's social circles, reaching the ears of the gala attendees, creating a buzz of anticipation and speculation. Antoine, unaware of the impending storm, arrived at the gala with Clara on his arm, a picture of confidence and success. He was oblivious to the whispers, the furtive glances, the knowing smiles that followed him as he navigated the crowded ballroom. Clara, however, was acutely aware of the shift in atmosphere. She'd read the article that morning, the revelations confirming her worst fears. The doubts that had plagued her for weeks now solidified into a cold, hard certainty. She looked at Antoine, his forced smile, his nervous gestures, and saw a man drowning in his own deception. The passion she'd once felt for him evaporated, replaced by a mixture of disgust and pity. She was trapped, caught in a web of her own making, her escape route blocked by the watchful eyes of the city's elite. And I, the architect of her misery, watched from the shadows, a silent puppeteer pulling the strings of their fate. The gala's highlight was a cooking demonstration by Antoine, a chance for him to showcase his culinary skills, to reaffirm his status as the city's culinary darling. He took the stage with his usual flair, his charisma momentarily masking the tension that crackled beneath the surface. He began preparing his signature dish, a decadent chocolate creation that had once captivated Clara's imagination. But tonight, the magic was gone. Clara watched him, his movements now mechanical, his smile strained, his eyes darting nervously towards the audience. She saw the cracks in his facade, the desperation that lurked beneath his carefully cultivated persona. And then it happened. Fueled by a potent cocktail of jealousy, betrayal, and public humiliation, Clara snapped. She stormed onto the stage, interrupting Antoine's demonstration, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "You liar!" she screamed, her words echoing through the ballroom. "You fraud! You're nothing but a cheat and a manipulator!" The audience gasped, their attention riveted on the unfolding drama. Antoine, caught off guard, stammered, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. He tried to regain control, to placate Clara, to salvage the situation. But it was too late. Clara, fueled by the whispers and rumors, the revelations of his past infidelities and financial woes, unleashed a torrent of accusations, her voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. She exposed his lies, his deceptions, his carefully constructed facade. She revealed his gambling addiction, his mounting debts, his desperation to maintain his public image. She painted a picture of a man driven by ego and ambition, a man who used women to advance his career, a man incapable of love or loyalty. The audience, initially stunned into silence, now buzzed with excitement, their whispers fueling the flames of Clara's rage. Antoine, his reputation in tatters, his career hanging by a thread, stood on the stage, a broken man, exposed and humiliated. The scene at the gala descended into chaos. The carefully orchestrated event, a celebration of philanthropy and high society, became a public spectacle, a feeding frenzy for the gossip-hungry attendees. Clara, her rage spent, her heart shattered, stumbled off the stage, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Antoine, his career in ruins, his reputation irrevocably tarnished, was left to face the scorn and ridicule of the crowd. The whispers turned to murmurs, then to open laughter, as the guests reveled in the downfall of the once celebrated chef. The cameras flashed, capturing the scene for posterity, ensuring that Antoine's humiliation would be immortalized in the annals of social media. I watched from the sidelines, a silent observer of the carnage I had created. A wave of satisfaction washed over me, a chilling sense of accomplishment. My plan had worked flawlessly. Antoine and Clara, the architects of their own destruction, were now paying the price for their betrayal. Their carefully constructed world had crumbled, their ambitions shattered, their reputations tarnished. They were left with nothing but the bitter taste of regret and the crushing weight of their own consequences. As the gala dissolved into a cacophony of gossip and speculation, I slipped away unnoticed, leaving behind the wreckage of their lives. I returned to my empty apartment, the silence now a comforting embrace. The lilies I had bought for Clara were wilted, their fragrance a faint reminder of a love that had withered and died. I poured myself a glass of the Bordeaux, the wine now bitter on my tongue. The revenge I had craved had been served, but it had left me hollow, a shell of the man I once was. The victory felt Pyrrhic, a hollow triumph that had cost me my own happiness, my own peace of mind. As I sat alone in the darkness, the echoes of the gala fading into the night, I wondered if the price of revenge had been worth the cost. But it was a question I couldn't answer, a question that would haunt me for years to come.